Welcome to Psychology of Daf. We are in Gemara Yoma Daf Nun Ches, and today we're going to talk about the mitzvah of tochacha, the mitzvah of rebuke, and we're going to come about it in a roundabout way, because the Gemara Amud Beis discusses the famous principle of ein ma'avirin ala mitzvahs. We do not pass over a mitzvah. Now, this matter has many halachic implications, as how one must behave if one becomes in contact with one mitzvah. In some way, they are already focusing and ready to do one mitzvah that they are in contact with, and then an even greater mitzvah comes along. Usually the halacha is that you do not pass over the current mitzvah, even for a greater mitzvah. An excellent summary of those halachas are available in Chai Odom Siman Samach Ches. But today I want to focus on the opposite concept, which is brought down in a tshuva of the Radbaz, Siman Kuf Pei Zayin. Radbaz lived from 1479 to 1573. And he talks about, what about ein ma'avirin ala veros? What about if there are two potential sins that each require corrective action? Do you pass over the minor sin and focus on the major, or vice versa? In this, the Radbaz deals with an interesting question. There was a group of rebellious individuals whom the rabbinic authorities considered that if they came down hard on them and punished them, they might become apostates and leave the community altogether. Yet to remain passive would be a de facto giving permission to sin, or at least imply that the sins were not as bad as they were. This would be a distortion of the Torah. Radbaz rules that they must aggressively repress the sinful activity, no matter what it would lead to, even if the individuals abandon faith altogether. He paraphrases our Gemara and states, ein ma'avirin ala veros, we do not pass over a sin. The implication is, even if a greater sin might come about, we tend to the violation in front of us. He goes on to say that the principle of Kol Yisrael Revim Zeh B'Zeh, that all Jews are responsible for other Jews' performance of mitzvahs and averos, does not apply to apostates. However, the Radbaz concludes with a cautionary note. He says that the leader of the generation has to be moderate in such things, according to which not all people are equal, and not all transgressions are equal. If the transgressor seems to have little regard for the Torah and is arrogant, then we should enforce the law despite what he may do. His actions are not on us. However, if the transgressor seems to be open to change, then we should engage him and draw him close, hoping that little by little he will change. There's no hurry to punishment, he says, lest it leads to a mishap. These matters must be decided according to the eyes of the Dayan. The Radbaz cautions, so long as his actions are for heaven's sake, l'shem shemayim, and not motivated by personal bias or ego. Now, another fascinating discussion about rebuke, hate, and the sinner can be found in Tosaf Sachem on Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Beis. Over there, Tosaf seems to draw a distinction between moderate hatred and utter hatred, maintaining that the state of utter hatred should be avoided even for the bona fide sinner. However, we know that times have changed. In practice, we do not usually come down harshly on sinners, almost regardless of the circumstances. I say almost, but it is true that almost regardless of the circumstances, we do not come down hard on sinners. And here's one final source that is perhaps the most lenient. This comes from a loyal student of Rav Chaim Volozhin, Rav Usher, who wrote a sefer called Keser Rosh, which contained a compendium of the minhagim and practices of his master of Chaim Volozhin. And in this sefer, Keser Rosh, Os Kuf Mem Gimel, Siman 143, he discusses the obligation to rebuke. And he says as follows. He says, when one gives rebuke, there's an obligation not to speak harshly. He furthermore adds, harsh words are never really heard. One must only use gentle language. But here is the most surprising element. Rav Chaim Volozhin goes on to say that should a person know himself to not be of the personality to speak in this gentle manner, he is exempt from the mitzvah of rebuke. How remarkable is that? If a person knows that they don't have the ability to give over rebuke in a kind and gentle manner, he is exempt and does not do the mitzvah of tochacha.